Hey, Jack, why are you reading those old comic books?
I don't call them old comics. I call them classic comics. And I'm reading them because classic comic books are good, and the modern comics just aren't the same.
What do you mean? I like the modern stories. I like seeing how the characters age and mature and take on better roles.
Boy, dog breath, have you got a screw loose? It's horrible how modern comics treat some characters. They try to make them interesting when they aren't. They make them act in ways that are weird or different. And don't get me started on how they make them older. They never get the ages right.
You know, Jack, you are not being fair. Fans want to see the characters in the new stories. They can't stay the same forever.
Oh, yeah? Well, what about when they forget about your favorite character? What then, Mr. Smart Alec?
Boys, calm down. There are places in comic fandom for both perspectives. Thank goodness we have a medium that allows us, the creators, to write stories in and out of continuity. Isn't that right, June?
I agree, Weezie. And while I can appreciate newer stories, you guys will always be our kids.
Wow. This just took a strange turn for the meta.
Welcome, dear listener, to our podcast, Jeff and Rick present Unpacking the Power of Power Pack,
where we journey through each issue of the most underrated Marvel series of the 80s while drinking beer,
analyzing awesome and amazing adolescent adventures, and absorbing alcohol.
I'm Jeff.
And I am Rick.
And a very warm welcome to our guests, June Brigman and Louise Simonson. Thank you both very much for joining us again. We really, really appreciate it, and we're really excited to get a chance to talk to you.
Yeah, we wanted to have you both back on our show together to ask more questions about the beginnings of Power Pack and, of course, about your new book, Power Pack Grow Up. So thank you guys very much for being on our show.
Thanks for having us.
Let's just start by going back way in the past since we have you both on the show. When and how did you two first meet?
We met when June came into my office looking for work. June, you can tell that story.
Boy, this is going back. That would have been, I believe, about 82 or 3. Well, Power Pack, the first issue came out in 84. It would have been, I think, 83. I came up to New York looking for work. I was staying with a friend who lived in a not so great neighborhood in the Bowery. I was showing my portfolio. And back then you could just, if you knew somebody who could get you in the door, you could get in the door. And you could walk from office to office, meeting editors, showing your work. And I met Weezie. She was an editor at the time, and showed her my work. And I don't think she had anything for me, but she did ask me if I knew how to draw children. And I said yes. Of course, I only kind of knew how to draw children, but I figure I could learn on the job. And but then, she told me about Power Pack, and I basically went back to this place I was staying, Sketches, and I think I brought them back in like the next day, and that was,
I put them together with the plot for the first issue and the précis for the next 3. And the character descriptions, verbal character descriptions, pages. And I said, okay, this is, I had him to shooter and said, if you like it, we're a team.
And speaking of being a team, besides Power Pack, what else did you guys do? Did you guys work on anything else?
We worked together since.
Yeah, like on New Mutants, and who can remember? June can remember. My brain is too old for this.
People bring me stuff to sign at conventions, and I'm like, who did that? We did a Star Wars miniseries together.
Really?
I believe it.
Right. They did that.
Some New Mutants stuff, and then we did a little Power Pack 7. Was it like a 7 or 8 page story in this all women comic book?
Right. That's Girl Power. Yeah, it was the Girl Power issue, and that was another throwback issue where they babysat Nathan Summers, a.k.a. Baby Cable, when X Factor was living in SHIP.
Oh, and then we did that Man of Steel job for DC.
Yes, we did. That's right.
Their Convergence thing. I've forgotten about that.
Well, that's pretty great then. So that is a 30-year history of things that have you've been able to weave in and out of each other's trajectories from time to time. So that's actually really, really cool. Since you've been in the industry together for 30 years, what kind of changes have you seen in the comics industry during that time?
Boy, a lot.
I've seen the editors seem to have less power. A lot of the story ideas are handed down from the top, in which there will be giant crossovers where the things get together in ways that were much more organized than we did back in the olden days. I don't know. That seems to be, I'm sure there's a lot of differences in distribution and the way that comic shops seem to operate. I like it that there's so many small companies that are springing up now, than Marvel and DC, that are doing very well, and that makes me quite pleased.
Yeah, that's actually kind of neat, because they've been finding there's a lot of, I want to call it niche industry stories that are being told that it doesn't seem like the main two players would really kind of want to touch into.
And there's some really cool stuff happening. So I think, honestly, it's for the best in the long run. I wonder, superheroes are always going to be there, but I don't think they're going to dominate the market in the future necessarily as much as they have in the past.
You think it's going to go a little bit more towards the indie kind of comics instead of the big grandiose universes?
Or more along the lines of like just kind of like personal storytelling, kind of like, this is this person's life kind of thing.
That's where I think it's going. I don't know. Look at June's great Captain Ginger.
Oh, we're going to be talking about that. That's next on the list of things to talk about.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Guys, I would say it's going in all three of the directions you mentioned. I think, there's always going to be the superhero genre, and I think though that there's still going to be the indie companies and the more personal work. Comics have gone so mainstream that there's room for all of that now.
I think there definitely is room for it, but I think that, I do wonder if financially, if the superheroes will continue to dominate the market in the way that they have in the past. I mean, I'm loving it that book publishers are now publishing graphic novels as well, like Scholastic,
right,
and Abrams.
Yeah, and the young adult market with graphic novels is really taking off.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, I'm doing a couple of those for DC.
Great. Which characters?
Wonder Woman and Catwoman. They're adaptations of novels that really major YA novelists have written, and I'm really adapting them for graphic novels.
Yeah, that's right. You're adapting the Warbringer novel.
And that's Lee Bardugo's book, and Sarah J. Maas's book, which is called, what was it? Soul Stealer.
Yeah, I had actually read Warbringer because I've drawn a blank on the writer's name, Leah Herberber. I like her stuff.
Lee Bardugo is the name of the writer.
There we go. Yeah, it's she seems like an interesting person, and also I've enjoyed her other books that I've read. So when I saw that she had written a Warbringer, I was like, oh, okay, here. Oh, I was honestly thinking it was going to be like a trade, and so I get it. I'm like, this is a book. What's up with this? But now I'll be able to look at it in trade form as well. That'll be kind of cool.
Well, there are a lot of things are getting turned into comics. It's interesting the way books are getting turned into comics, and comics are getting turned into movies. I mean, there's an awful lot of fermentation between all these mediums, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of stigma has kind of been removed from different medias where, before it was kind of like, well, small screen, big screen, and those actors and actresses never will meet. And now it's like, oh yeah, they just kind of go back and forth. And like you were saying, kind of, comic adaptation of things, or yeah, just that cross-pollination of storytelling where everybody, it's kind of along the lines where it's like, wow, this is just a good story. It doesn't matter how I'm being fed it, as long as I have access to it. This is a great way to be able to, be entertained and have a story told to me.
I think that's also a really interesting turn that's happening right now in just, the acceptance of comics as a viable medium.
We can say now the most profitable movie of all time, a comic book movie. Yes, comics has hit mainstream.
Oh, big time, yeah.
I mean, there's a whole batch of television shows, too, that are based on comics these days.
Oh, yeah. Yes, there is more choices out there for a lot of different type of comic-related properties. DC's got their entire Arrowverse going on. The Boys is just released on Amazon. You've got all of the Netflix Marvel properties that are out there, and even things like Stranger Things, which it's definitely got a comic book feel to it as far as its presentation. You were mentioning before about Captain Ginger, and before we dive into all the Power Pack content, I really wanted to gush a little bit over June's work on Captain Ginger. Thank you so much for a great comic book that you and Stuart more have made. How did you start working with Ahoy Comics?
Well, it was through Stuart. Stuart and I had worked together for a company called Tishkil that was based in Kuwait and published comics in the Middle East. Interesting. Had some interesting challenges doing that. But that was the first time I had worked with Stuart. Yes, it was during that time. Stuart wrote a story that had a scene at a cat rescue place. Drew a bunch of cats, and he liked it. And so down the road, when he came up with the idea for Captain Ginger, he thought of me.
For some reason. 10 reasons.
Why would he do that? I think we put together some samples and a proposal, and he shopped it around. And this was like, I guess he started shopping this around probably 4 years ago. And we were getting lots of nibbles, but no bites. Ahoy came along, and they hired Stuart to be, I believe, I'm not sure exactly what his title is. It's sort of like an editor-in-chief title. Presented them with the Captain Ginger proposal, and they liked it and picked it up. And I'm very, very grateful for that. They've been a wonderful company to work for. We were going to kickstart it. We were about ready to kickstart it, and I wasn't looking forward to that. The timing was really good, and it's just worked out wonderfully. And they're happy with it, and happy enough that we're going to do 6 more issues. I just finished issue 5. I think the plan is to have this like Captain Ginger books come out. I think they're going to start publishing in February of 2020. So yeah, there will be more.
Yeah, I was going to just ask, how excited are you about the second series?
Oh, I'm thrilled. I mean, I love this book. I love these characters, and I'm just thrilled.
Stuart really is a terrific writer. He's really, really good. I would pick up anything that Stuart, not just even anything June was doing, because we all know I do that. But anything Stuart, it's going to be good.
He's a great. I've been blessed to work with great writers. I mean, I've gotten to work with Weezie, and Stuart is another one that he's so good. I really, when I get the plots, I'll finish them. I'll be like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Are they going to be okay? And it actually kind of gets darker. This next round of books is a little darker than the first round.
You kind of almost have to make a little bit of a turn like that just to keep the story going forward, keep there to be some real movement in the plot and elements, just to bring it a little bit darker. But it has been a joy to read not only that series, but pretty much anything Ahoy puts out. When we first talked, you had told us about Captain Ginger, and that was the first I'd ever heard of Ahoy Comics, and that was part of their original initial run. I love their stuff. They have amazing content, and you get a lot of content for the dollars that you put down, which is even more impressive, too.
It's more like a magazine,
right,
really, than a comic book. And you do get a lot of bang for your buck.
Oh, yes.
That's one of the reasons why I think that the rise of the smaller publishers is really significant.
They can take some chances that some of the bigger publishers don't want to take. Mm-hmm. Going back to Ahoy Comics and them working with Mark Russell on getting out Second Coming. DC passed on the book. Ahoy Comics said, we'll take that and we'll put it out, and they are reaping the benefits of it. So it's nice to see. It's nice to see the little guys really understand what the customers want, understand what the artist wants, and how to really make those things intersect.
I also think that because they're a smaller company, they can take bigger risks because they don't have as far to fall.
The overhead that Marvel has as a comic book company. I mean, you'd think that Marvel would be rolling in dough because they're part of Disney now. But in actual fact, I don't think it actually works that way. Maybe supposed to support themselves. And there's a lot of expense in having big New York offices.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But then when you have the littler companies and, they decide that they're going to base themselves in a little more remote areas and utilize the technology that's available and let, the artists and writers live where they want to live, we're going to turn that overhead into actual, push it back out into the product and really make it work for itself.
I also think there's maybe less interference. I don't think there's as much approval by committee. It was the bigger companies. I certainly know with Ahoy, they've just been like, yeah, go make comics. Turn us loose and let us do our thing.
Speaking as, a couple of the fans of the work that's coming out of, things like Ahoy and IDW as well, and a few of the other, smaller places, we love it. Yeah. We love the comics that are coming out. We love the new takes on stories, and don't stop. Please bring us more.
And they're different takes as well, which is fantastic because it's stuff that you may not have had any access to before. It was very much like with Kwanzaa and his Black series, which I don't know if you know about that. We talked to him. He actually was a guest on our show reviewing one of your issues for Power Pack. And his comic is about they're superheroes, but they're secret underground, and only people of Black ancestry have superpowers.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and it and it blends very heavily into kind of like the, slave culture, the African history. There's a lot of things in there that he's done in his world building that it's not mainstream. It's not what you would normally just kind of be like, hey, what's Spider-Man doing kind of thing.
Let's go ahead and take a turn into why a lot of people really tune in and talk about Grow Up. Your new book, Power Pack Grow Up #1, is out as of August 28th, and we want to say right now that this is going to be a very spoiler-heavy section, so that if you, the listener, have not read Power Pack Grow Up #1, please stop now and go get this book. If you've read it, then go and buy another copy and listen to the rest of this then. Get like 2 or 3 copies. We don't mind. But you have been warned that the rest of this is going to be spoilery because we're going to be talking about the issue itself.
What Rick is basically saying is, spoilers ahead!
Yeah, seriously.
How exciting was it to go back into this world together, and how much fun was it to revisit these kids after so long away from them?
I actually thought it was really fun. Go back, and I actually went back and read, I guess, at least 1 through 25. I didn't read beyond that, oddly enough. But I did read the stuff that I had done with June, just to kind of try to get the flavor of the characters, to make sure they were as I remembered them.
How about you, June?
It was great. I remember once an interviewer asking me, if I were stuck on a desert island and could only draw one comic book character for the rest of my life, who would it be? But I can pick 4. And it would be Power Pack. Maybe a cat or 2 thrown in there.
They could have a pet. They could have pets.
It was great to come back. I feel like it was a second chance. And it was great to come back because, I love the characters, and it's always great working with Weezie. Now, I know more. After doing this for like 35 years, I've figured out a few things. I could just relax and enjoy the characters and enjoy, drawing these stories much more now than when I was first starting.
And actually, I loved your drawing from the very beginning, which but the original plot that you drew was originally supposed to be 30 pages. And then they said, you said you could only do 22 because you have so many other commitments. So I cut it down to 22, but it was still so crowded with action and character stuff. And you pulled it off. It was just amazing. It was so active and so beautiful.
I don't know.
You could tell what was going on. Everybody was, feeling as they were supposed to feel. It was just great.
Let me thank you right now. You did a lot of butt saving on the last part of this job, because towards the end there, I'm drawing all this stuff, and I'm like, oh my God, I don't know if this makes sense or not. I hope Weezie can help me with this. And you did.
Your writer asked you to do the impossible, and you did it. So yay, you.
It was it's been a while since I've tried to do anything like this, but liked it. It was fun to get back into.
For a lot of characters, there was Power Pack, friends who really saw in the beginning of the book, but then Wolverine and Kitty and Friday and Akanti Space Whales and Brood.
And Kofi.
Yeah. That's a lot of people to fit into 22 pages.
And looking through this art, it is gorgeous, gorgeous art. You did a fantastic job. It looks beautiful. It looks clean. It looks very detailed. It's gorgeous work. It's You all should be very proud of this book. This is a wonderful, very loving callback to the Power Pack of issues 1 through 25. It's the early season, the early beginnings of Power Pack, and it's very much a love letter to that.
And I don't know if I can speak for Rick, but when I was reading it last night, I was doing so with just a big smile on my face, and I was looking at it, and occasionally I just kind of look up around the room with a smile, and I'm like, nobody in the room with me knows what's going on. My kid's playing on the floor, and Hillary's doing this, but I'm just so happy. And then I go back to reading.
Was this story always kicking around, or did you start to develop it when you got the call from Marvel?
When I got the call from Marvel, never even occurred to me it hadn't occurred to me to do another Power Pack story because I thought it was over. And we've seen other people grow Power Pack up in a lot of ways, in a lot of different ways. So it just seemed appropriate that after all these years, it's been a year later. Their powers, this is pretty much a year after they got their powers. Alex had gotten that telescope for his birthday, that one
right.
Where they first fought.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
It was, it was just a year later, essentially, from when they were powers. And it just seemed appropriate, all things considered.
And this is the thing that made Weezie's story so great are the character bits. I mean, a lot of people can write superheroes and superhero fights and aliens, blah, blah, blah. But it's the character bits that really make these stories come alive for me. And I just thought it was so smart to center the story around a birthday party for Alex, that kind of tween age and all the angsting and woeing that comes with being not quite a kid, not quite a teenager, and he's interested in a girl, but what does he do? And Katie's, still resenting being a baby, and Julie's just being, kind of the serious, middle child, and Jack's just being, grumpy, and it's all that character stuff that she worked into this plot that, really, I don't know, to me, that's what sets Power Pack apart.
Well, thanks. I think I appreciate that. I think Julie in the story's feelings are a little hurt because her brother's really, they've been the four of them really close because they're a team, and suddenly he's growing away from her. And I think there's all of them really, the urge to hold on. So it was kind of a story about letting go too.
What's fascinating to me, and I'm going to speak for myself because I know that Jeff has not read it yet, and I don't know if either of you have read the pre-issue for the Future Foundation that just came out in Fantastic Four.
No, I haven't seen any of them, actually.
Okay. Jeremy Whitley is going to be writing Future Foundation, and that first issue is coming out this week, I think. But they did a pre-issue as a backup story in Fantastic Four number 12. And so in the backup story, it's got Alex, who's grown up and who is out in space, and he's in charge of the Future Foundation. And they go and get Julie, who's just broken up with her girlfriend, and she's basically has decided that sitting on a couch watching daytime soaps is her way of coping with this. Jeremy Whitley does a fantastic job of Alex and Julie just kind of picking back up where they left off, even though they both had different adventures in life. They come back together, and the first thing is like, she's critiquing the stubble of facial hair he's got on his face, and he's critiquing, oh my gosh, you smell terrible, why haven't you taken a shower? And they just get back into that brother and sister kind of picking on each other. But then there's also the, oh my gosh, give me a big hug, where have you been, what have you been doing, of course I'll help you, that camaraderie too. It's fascinating to kind of juxtapose what you've got here and what Jeremy Whitley's got there, and seeing how they're very complementary to each other. So it's really very cool. And I think it's pretty impressive too, because I know you haven't read his stuff. He definitely has read yours, so he's definitely picked up on that. But it's nice that these two stories, written kind of in a vacuum to each other, play off each other really well.
Sounds like it's really nice that he's continued that, kind of sibling dynamic with the characters. And I think that's very true to life. I think you get these relationships when you're a child and growing up that continue right on into adulthood.
These are patterns, of interaction that, they kind of start out, you work them out early, kind of keep on keeping on. It's kind of, it's one of the things that makes it, when you meet your siblings, like my family gets together every couple of years for a big family reunion. And when my sisters, it's as if we hadn't been apart. Those sibling ties are so there. And probably the same kinds of interactions, I bet.
Yeah, you can have that with family, definitely, and friends as well, where you don't see them for 2, 3, 5, 10 years, and you see them again. You just get right back into the swing of the relationship, which is always really nice.
Yeah.
The setting and plot of this book is very good, and I think we've talked about how happy it just made us reading it, but we really love the callbacks to the Marvel of the late 80s and early 90s. What, if any, were your biggest challenges you faced in recreating the look, feel, or sound of the characters and scenes of that time?
I think a lot of that was up to June, and she did it so great. I loved the crowd in Central Park that were getting ready to listen to the Lila concert.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did you sneak anybody else that you know into the crowd?
I don't know. I can't remember. There might have been somebody who looked like my husband back in the crowd there. I always try to sneak him in, and but most of it was just based on that time because I'm old enough. I lived it. I lived through the shoulder pads and the fanny packs and the mohawks and the piercings and the punk rock scene and all of that was going on. So, and the mullets, and torn T-shirts. I tried to work in all that stuff in that crowd scene. It was just fun.
And speaking of like the big callbacks and incorporating a lot of old stuff, how much of this is not only a Power Pack love letter, but also a little bit of an X-Men love letter? Because you've got like the Akanti, you've got the Brood, you've got Lila. How fun was it for you, Weezie, to kind of do those callbacks to some of the obscure X-Men stuff?
It was both obscure and logical perspective. I mean, I wanted to bring Kofi into it, obviously. Mm-hmm. And so he'd be off in space, and then it's who appeared most with Power Pack were Kitty and Wolverine.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Them in, and then you say, well, gosh, I mean, I could do Snarks again, but probably not time yet to do Snarks. I always loved the Akanti. I thought that was such a great idea. These giant that got turned into spaceships, which I think were borrowed from somebody's novel. I think Chris kind of somebody's novel when he created the Akanti. I don't remember whose though, but I thought they just looked great, and it kind of maybe sets up something that I might want to do in the future when we do something next. So it was just fun doing Kitty and Wolverine, just because not that the kids would have been fine without them.
It was nice having them in there, and they incorporated in the story very well.
Editor was actually happy to have X-Men in there too, because I think she thought it would sell a little better.
Never hurts.
June, with doing the Akante and the Brood, how much of your own research did you have to do going back and looking at those, or was that from memory?
Oh no, I had to Google that. I vaguely remember the Brood, but when I read in the plot Akanti, I'm like, what? Sorry. As soon as I saw them, I was like, oh wow, this is going to be cool. I really enjoyed drawing them, and those are some of my favorite pages in the book. Shout out to the colorist, Tamra. I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name. It looks like Bonvillain. It might be Bonvillain, but Tamra did a great job coloring. And got to give props to my husband who inked it. But those are some of my favorite pages are the Akanti pages. I love the color on that, and they were really cool to draw.
I keep coming back to the first page with Alex leaning out the window and the kids looking up. There's something about that composition of that page that it just grabs you right from the start. That's the one that I want to have up on my wall for some reason. I don't know why, but because there's a lot of great art in here, but that one just really jumps out at me for some reason. I love that picture of the kids.
It was a very Power Pack page, wasn't it?
Very much so, yes. This is a growing up story, really focusing on the kids aging, especially since there's an obvious time delay between now and when you last wrote them. Was this deliberate nod to the inevitable aging of these characters, or was this just, again, for convenience sake?
I suppose it was kind of a deliberate not, I guess. It was a choice that I made a year older. It's been, gosh, so 35, 40 years? I don't know, a long time since that story
35
was
years.
done.
Yeah, well, the first one came out in August of 84, so there's 35 years basically now.
Right, that they should maybe age a few months. I mean, they were, I guess the last major story that we did was the Christmas special. Whereas back the way they originally, and costumes back the way they were originally done. That happened in winter around Christmas time. Several months after that.
If it were up to me, they would only age, Power Pack would only age 1 year for every 35 years.
I agree with you, June.
I think that's a good idea. And now also you can have 3 more. No, and if you can count Kofi or Franklin, you can have up to 5 more birthdays to celebrate with fun adventures. That could be an entire another series, is just the birthday series.
As much as I agree with you, I also do like the Future Foundation stuff. They're doing really good with those kids. But
you can have 2 divergent storylines. You can have the current timeline stuff, and then you can have callback series, which I think is fine as well. I mean, look at a lot of the stuff that's being written right now. I think with Thor, they're doing kind of 3 different types of tellings of story ages, where they're like, okay, this is Thor way in the past during Viking ages. Okay, here's Thor during the current storyline, and here's Thor billions of years in the future. So I think there's totally a place for being able to do Future Foundation stuff and being able to do original stories from the 80s. I think that works perfectly fine.
And a lot of that stuff, nothing has been established, I guess, that I know of anyway, because I have no idea what, except for only in the very vaguest sense of what people have done with our characters. I sort of didn't want to know, because I didn't want to be annoyed at anybody. And actually, it sounds like I probably would be pleased. But
they've treated them all very well, I think.
Good. I'm glad to hear it.
I want to ask a specific question of June, because there's one scene in this that really stuck out to me, and I need to know a little background on it. It's the scene where Alex meets Wolverine in the forest, and Wolverine is leaning up against a tree, and he is about to eat a stick of gum. If this was the 80s and this was being drawn with Wolverine, that was going to be a cigarette, correct?
It was a cigar.
A cigar, sorry.
I'd already drawn it, and the editor said, smoking. And I'm like, well, I've already drawn this. And he's got his hand up to his face, and I don't want to have to change it into something that looks weird. So I thought, well, what do people do who can't smoke?
I caught it right away. It's fantastic. I love it. And I think that whether you meant to or not, there's a definite subtext that's there about, here's something that's a throwback that has since changed that we can't quite do. There's an entire conversation that goes on with that scene because of that small change. So I love it the way it is. It's fantastic.
You really want to be around Wolverine when he's quitting smoking?
No.
What would have been funny, instead of going for the stick of gum, you could have just gone for like a New York slice of pizza, and he's just got a slice of pizza in the middle of the woods for no reason.
That could work too.
Let's talk a little bit about the second story, if we can. I just have a couple questions about from the second story. I wish that we could have Gory Hurry on as well for talk about their drawings and just thank them for all the work that they did, because I think it's beautiful artwork that they have in that second story, and it's a nice call out to Gory Hurry as being the artist for the all ages comic books.
Because Katie because we had made such a big deal about her Lila doll, to think of a second story, it was like, yeah, we'll do a story about the doll. Part of the story, so.
I think it's a very cute story.
That actually is I think my favorite part of the book is the very last panel, just because they're all family, they're all happy with each other, they're all hugging, and just like Alex is amazed that Katie gave him her favorite action collectible figurine right now, and had it signed
by Lila herself.
By Lila herself, yeah.
Yeah, by Lila. And so that was just the warmest, fuzziest feeling in my heart, was the very last panel on that. But I also love the fact that you brought Lila in there. Why Lila? And also I love the fact that she's not there. She's just it's the background concert. What prompted the addition of Lila Cheney and having them go to a birthday concert?
Back in the 80s, We lived 2 buildings over from Central Park. Was where Power Pack lived, 2 buildings over from Central Park. But there used to be concerts in the sheep meadow all the time. I mean, we're going to bring, drama from outer space coming in with explosions and fireworks. So it seemed appropriate that we have fireworks. Well, how will we get everybody? Why would everybody be there in the middle of summer concert? I mean, it was just New York logic, essentially.
That works out great. And and Lila ties into the Marvel Universe really well, and especially the X-Men. In this issue, you really had a chance to spotlight Alex and Katie. When do you think you're going to come back and give Julie and Jack some love, too?
Oh, pretty soon. I don't know. June, how soon will we be able to do that?
I don't know. I mean, it looks like, I think I can say this, that we will be doing a 5-issue miniseries.
Asked to.
The near future, but I'm not sure when. So,
and I have commitments, so I can get my part done, and then she's going to have to draw it, it's time consuming. You've got a whole new Captain Ginger series to do.
Yeah, I honestly, I probably wouldn't be able to start it until like April.
Right.
But hey, you know what? There is a very strong Power Pack community out there, and it will be our pleasure to keep that in here and to let everybody know that, because Jeff and I are just over here. We're just dancing a little bit. We're excited.
Yeah. Love you two together and what you do. So very excited about that.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for supporting Power Pack.
Yeah, it's great, and you do such a nice job with your show.
We really try to. We have fun with it. We have fun talking about these issues, and we have fun reaching out and pulling in a very interesting community of people who like to listen to the show, who read the books, who like to talk about them. And that leads us perfectly into my next segment, because that's called a segue, into talking about some of the questions that our fans have. And of course, we always start off with my daughter, Carrie, who is sitting here very patiently on my lap right now. She snuck into the room. You want to say hi, Carrie?
Hi.
Carrie.
Thank you for letting us read this early for the interview. I really liked how Alex chose his family over his girlfriend. And I really like how Katie gave her brother the Lila action figure. It was very nice. It was a really neat to see the new story.
I'm glad you liked it. We had a lot of fun doing it.
How much fun did you two have making this book together?
It was
I had a whole lot of fun. I hope June did too.
Did. It was challenging, but it was fun because I got to draw so many different characters.
My friend and I like making comics, but we both like to draw and write. How do you work together to make comic books?
Because we live in whole different parts of the country, and then June draws the pictures. But I bet you and your friend live close together, right?
Kind of. He's moving right now.
But he's still going to be in the same area, right?
Yeah.
And you'll still see him.
Do you guys actually get together and talk to each other?
Yes. Every Monday.
Oh, do you? Oh, lovely. Well, then I guess you can. So are you going to write the story together and draw it together? Or are you going to, one of you writes it and the other one draws it? How's it going to work?
Well, we kind of work on different kinds of books, but I really want us to work on the same book together, but then who's going to take it home?
Oh, I see. One thing I had that happen with a book I was working on one time with 2 different artists that were working on the same book. It was a book called Meltdown. And we split up the characters. We had 2 major characters. One was Wolverine and the other one was Havoc. And we split them up so that the characters were quite often on different pages. And that meant that both the artists could work on it at the same time. I don't know, I don't know what your story is like, so I don't know if you could do that.
Maybe.
Do you have anything else you want to ask?
Not really, but I really like how you guys let us read it early for the interview.
Well, I'm glad that we were able to do that. That was our pleasure.
Yes, it was. I'm glad you liked it.
Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. Bye, Carrie.
Bye.
Thank you guys very much. All right, we'll just go into our listener questions now.
Power Pack fan asks, why did you do the power switch in issue number 25?
Because I felt like it.
Interesting.
I had always in my mind, the kids had gotten the powers that they needed out there. That when Elfar Whitemane died, his powers, and he sort of released his powers, that they were kind of for the taking. When the kids needed a specific power to have, usually to escape some bad thing that was going to happen, that's the power they got. Jack got the cloud power probably because he needed it last, and that was the one that was left. But you know what? With that power, that is one fighting kid.
Jack can take any power and make it his.
Yeah.
It's right.
Although I think it would be fascinating to see him with the lights. No, actually, it wouldn't. If he had the light speed power, he'd just be. He would get in more trouble, I think.
He'd be zippy punchy, but also Pranky Man.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would be his hero name, would be Pranky Man.
It'd be kind of fun to see. I expect when we do the next story, to keep the powers they have. Could switch them around.
You know,
do whatever we want.
Exactly.
Well, maybe not whatever, but I'm really not sure what we'll do. We'll come up with something, but that's the fun of it. We can play with these characters, and I think if Jack had the light speed power, I think he would feel like he was being very girly with the rainbow effect. It could be hilarious.
No.
You know what? I think he's a little deeper than that. I think that he would figure out a way to own it himself.
He would figure out a way to probably make it go solid and then wrap it around the bad guys.
Right. Yeah. The only thing he wouldn't do is he would not take the pink costume.
No, he would not.
Yeah, he'd learn how to weaponize a rainbow.
Yes, he would weaponize a rainbow. Jared Albrecht, the yard sale artist from the Long Box Crusade, he asks, if Marvel called tomorrow and asked you to do a 12-issue run of Power Pack, how would you feel about that? You know what? We already have the answer. We already have this answer. I just realized it. Do you have one more year of Power Pack stories inside you, or do you feel that you have a sense of fulfillment with nothing left to say on those characters? I think it sounds like you guys definitely have more stories inside that you want to tell.
I think I do. I honestly, when this one came up, at first I was like, gee, do I? But the more I think about it, the more I actually like the idea of aging them just a little bit, pushing Alex right over the edge of teenagehood. And in the dynamic that might set up, I think it opens a whole new realm of possibilities. So yeah, I think I've got plenty more stories to tell. And I want to bring Franklin Richards in again.
Oh, yes.
I do too. That he and Katie are the same age, and I love how they kind of mix it up. And that would be a lot of fun to do.
Jeremy Daw asks, given how well you handled sensitive issues in the past, are there any stories you feel compelled to do now, especially with the current issues of today?
Oh, probably. I mean, I'm sure we'll do something. I'm not sure which. There's an awful lot of stuff out there. Kind of would like to do another Snark story, maybe in a different kind of way. I would like to do a story about a young female Snark. Really interesting to see. I'm actually kind of interested in the social setup of the Snark Empire. There's interact. They have this. The male has this harem of females who actually tend to run things.
Yeah.
And fight it out among each other, often to the death. So I think that would be. I don't know. I don't know if that has anything to do with anything, but I think it would be fun to do.
Would you ever want to have the Power Pack kids mirror your politics?
I think they do. They just don't talk politics, but they definitely mirror them.
Would you want to put in stories that would, I don't want to say make Power Pack political, but I mean, would you ever want to put in stories that would lead have more of a political conversation inside the book?
I don't think so. The conversation would be covert rather than overt, I think, simply because it really is a kid's book.
Okay.
That the kids are dealing with they would certainly if they find themselves, because this is what happens, as John Figueroa helped me do, it mirrors what's going on in the outside world. Yeah, I mean, that kind of thing. We already did guns. I mean, there's a lot of stuff we could do, and that we wouldn't necessarily have to set it on Earth to make a point. I want stories that make people think about why things are right and why they're wrong.
You're capable of doing that. I think and that is also what a lot of good science fiction does.
Yes.
Use different settings, future settings, alien settings to comment on our world, our Earth. I think some writers can handle relevancy, some can't. It shouldn't be, like hitting the reader over the head with a 2x4. I think what you're saying is if it's an issue that's relevant to children the age of Power Pack,
Right.
it could happen. That could work in.
Yes.
Radioactive Dog Welder asks, did you ask to use the X-Men characters, or because it was in the past, they just let you use them?
I use them. The editor may even have mentioned that we could use them to me at the time. I don't remember, but I would never have used them without permission. I mean, that's just stupid, because, you want to do the story and they say, oh, yeah, the story's great, except you can't do it.
AJ asks, due to the sliding timeline as Gen Z kids, do you think the Power siblings would be social media famous?
No, I don't know if they would, because that would be up to the people who are doing modern comics now. I don't think they're going to be our comic. If they get famous in somebody else's comic, that's, up to whoever own up versions of them.
But if you were writing them in today's world, would you write them as being social media famous?
I don't know. I think being famous is you necessarily want to be more. It's kind of a nightmare, I think. People are. I don't know. They're villains are out to get you. Villains are out to get your family in the superhero universe anyway. And in real life too, a lot of very famous people have bodyguards. Can you imagine? Family all the time. They certainly wouldn't be famous as themselves. They might be famous as a superhero team that nobody knows who they really are, like Superman. But I certainly wouldn't reveal their identities. I don't think, because I wouldn't want to put them through that.
Yeah, I don't think that they would be social media famous, because it's not like they ever stick around for accolades. They're usually working, a lot of the stuff they're doing, if they're in space, they're down in the Morlock tunnels, it's at night. They're not like at the major crime scene going, don't worry, Power Pack's here. We're going to save the president from the burning building and the orphans. They're never doing anything like that. They're always very much like, okay, we got to get home. Let's go. So they're
kind of sneaking around being secret heroes.
Yeah, very much so.
Keep it that way, which is not to say that a story wouldn't come up where they field as a team and have their own measure of fame. On the other hand, it's the Marvel universe. There's a lot of characters in the Marvel universe. Maybe it isn't be Spider-Man, or the Fantastic Four. There are plenty of low-level heroes that they might aspire to disappear into that group if they actually got noticed.
Yeah, as you said, there are so many heroes to be found. They could easily just get lost in the wash.
I think they would try to do that, because I think being famous is not as much fun as it looks like it is. They're famous to us because we love them.
Exactly. John from the Married with Comics podcast asks, does Marvel's inconsistent aging of the various Power Pack characters in Franklin annoy, amuse, or escape your notice altogether?
My notice altogether. I know they do that, but they seem to be Marvel. It looks to me like Marvel is kind of ignoring continuity. They used to be continuity rigid, where one thing followed after another, and now it's kind of all over the map, it looks like. So body is kind of slotted into a different part of a timeline, I guess. Franklin Richards, the way they keep aging him and de-aging him and doing weird things with Franklin has always made me completely crazy. But that's just because I feel sorry for him.
Al Sedano at the Warlock Thanos podcast asks, did you ever have any plans for bringing back Rebecca, the girl who teleports via light from issue 37? either in Power Pack or in the Mutants or X Factor?
No, because I think she was in the very last issue that I wrote, I think. Wasn't she?
We haven't made it up that far yet, and of course, as I was saying that, I was even thinking, is that John Bogdanov's? But I'd have to look that up.
Somebody else who drew that. I don't remember who. Sorry, person who drew it.
But you are familiar with the character. Did you ever think about bringing her into Power Pack or New Mutants or X Factor?
No, because I was leaving the book. I could in theory. She was actually a conversation I had with one of my friend's daughters. So the child is named Rebecca for Rebecca Littlehales. All grown up. She's like 40 years old now. But it's based on a conversation we had about Power Pack. If she had powers, what power she would choose. No, I had not actually thought of bringing her into it, which is not to say that I wouldn't.
Well, I'll just go ahead and we'll plop that seed down there for you, and you can use that in the future if you wanted.
New ideas.
The Hammer Strikes asks, what is your favorite Power Pack story that you two created together?
I think June should answer this one because you know what? I've been talking too much.
I'm sorry, a lot of these were kind of focused towards you. I apologize, June.
Just writer stuff. I just draw stuff. I just draw the pictures. My favorite story is the one where I think it's called the Kid Who Fell to Earth, and it introduces Kofi, and then it also brings Franklin Richards in. I think that was maybe the last story I drew in the original run of Power Pack,
and it also introduced Jackal, who was the an interesting character too.
It was a great story, and it was a little bit darker than a lot of the stories. I mean, Franklin was having these really scary premonitions about what was going to happen. He sees them fulfilled, and he's this tiny little kid who's now having to confront these horrible monsters, and I don't know. It was a good story, and I really liked the interaction between Katie and Franklin. It was this great fantasy, but was also very, very real in the emotions and the interactions.
I agree with June. I vote for the same one.
That was I was just looking at our list, and we currently have that as our 9th favorite story. So it is one of our favorite ones as well.
What is your favorite?
Our favorite one right now is Power Pack 25, Power Trip.
Yeah, that was kind of paying off on the whole that whole Kid That Fell to Earth story in a way.
Yes, that kind of is the end of the Jackal saga. A lot of different things happen in between there, but it was the finale of the Snark Wars. They all switched their powers. It just was a fantastic issue. It was a wonderful issue. But our second favorite is still Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, because there is nothing better than our Katie Power having a surprise Thanksgiving dinner with all of the superheroes.
Yeah, which is we love that so much. Everybody loves that so much. It just gets referenced not infrequently, where people are like, "Hey, do you remember the Thanksgiving episode?" It's like, yes, we do. It's great.
And the penciler for Power Pack 37 was Sal Velluto.
Velluto, that's right. Good. And when the time comes, so we sound like we remember who everybody was.
Gibson asks, if you were to create Power Pack today, what changes would you make with their attitude or dynamics or looks? And would you still have Alex say G?
In a modern context of the media and cell phones and all of that?
Yes.
I don't know. That's how they look would be. I don't know, June, would you change how they look?
I mean, maybe a little. I mean, there's some things about their costumes that are very 80s. I mean, those boots. I think I based those on some snow boots I had when I first moved to New York.
Those boots are awesome.
But there's a redesign, I don't know who did it, of Alex's G Power that I really like. Looks very cool and is actually much easier to draw than what I came up with. So I would probably go with the redesign on Alex. And, maybe change their boots a little, but basically leave it alone.
I agree. I wouldn't change their personalities at all. I feel like they are who they are.
And you'd still have Alex say G?
Oh, no, I'd probably have him say something that modern kids say, but I have no idea what that is. I'd have to ask my grandchildren at this point in my life.
Okay, that leads me. This is a complete segue away. We just finished this up. It was when Johnny brought the gun. The gun was going to kill Alex, and they became friends. After Hobgoblin had kidnapped the both of them. You have Alex say "Yamuta's mustache" to Johnny Rival. And where did that come from? Because it is absolutely my favoriteest thing I've ever heard, and I had no idea where it's from.
It doesn't sound like something I would write, but then I run across that all the time. It's like.
Me and Rick were discussing it. It was just like, well, I think this is a thing that nobody says, but Alex thinks that people should say it, like he heard it once, or he misheard something, and he's like, yeah, of course this is a cool thing to say. Yamuta's mustache.
I bet the Thing would say that, and he's pretty sure the Thing would say it, and he thinks the Thing is cool, so therefore he's going to say it too.
Love it. Okay,
so
perfect.
Say.
That's now canon for me. He got it from Ben Grimm the Thing. Or from something he thinks Ben Grimm the Thing would say.
I'm sure he overheard it. He probably overheard it when he was visiting the Fantastic Four and Richard and Franklin and all of that.
Sounds perfectly plausible to us. We have now entered. We've now have our last two fan questions, and this is where things get really silly. So we'll start off with Power Pack Nation. Go ahead.
Yeah, and their first question is: what foods are not Franklin Richards' favorites?
No, he seems to eat a lot of stuff, doesn't he? And a lot of things are his favorites.
They are. He loves foods.
We've actually started our own drinking game with it. Every time he says, "Oh boy, that's my favorite," not only do we take a drink, but we list off all the things he's already said previously that are his favorites.
Little soup for one of his favorites.
Yeah. So is there anything that's not his favorite?
I don't think he likes sushi.
Yeah.
I can see that.
June, do you have an opinion on this?
I don't know. When I was drawing Franklin, I think I was picturing little John Byrne. Maybe we should find out what John Byrne absolutely will not eat.
Oh, I don't know if we want to do that.
I'm just so seriously going to love hearing that. I think he'll be really pleased.
We got to get him to listen to our show.
There you go.
I'll just follow that up with saying that Power Pack Nation wanted to thank Weezie for being the super nicest person they had ever met. Apparently they met you at Garden State Comic Fest not too long ago, and they had nothing but delightful things to say about you.
Well, that's sweet. Well, they're great too, so there you go.
And the final questions, as always on our list, come from our fan, Tim Price, who he is on the show as one of our guests, and he does the voice of Johnny Rival, and he decided that he was going to do Johnny Rival's voice as James Cagney. And oh God, it works. It is a thing to behold. It really is.
It was very funny.
He's a great guy too. That was very interesting to record that one.
And it was interesting because?
No, it was very interesting just because it's guns at school.
School shoot.
Well, but luckily, the way you guys did it, there wasn't a school shooting. It just, he had the gun at school. And then afterwards at the park, when him and Alex are fighting, that's when he pulled it out on Alex. But it's very much in the news too. And so we started off the show with us just saying, we're going to do a warning for everybody here. We're going to be talking about kids with guns, kids pointing guns at each other, and kids having guns and shooting them. If this is something that's a subject that you're not comfortable with, we completely understand. But we just kind of wanted to give a blanket warning, and we had fun with the surrounding story, but we did seriously talk about some of the things that with him having the gun and how that kind of dealt with how it's a little bit different back then and what it's like now, and trying to do the same kind of story nowadays, which would be honestly much more difficult.
Back then, I did that story because our friend John Figueroa, he was talking, I think I told you this story, right, about his little sister finding a gun thrown away under a bush.
No, you had not.
Okay, well, that was because of John. John was the inspiration for a lot of these stories, actually. In the darker hour was John. Thank you, John.
And who was John?
Was one of my daughter's friends from, well, it was in, I guess they met in intermediate school. Well, they were in IS 44.
Mm-hmm.
It's on into high school. He and Ruth and Jenny and John were friends all through, intermediate school and then high school. And John lived over in the projects where it was during rough time. The 80s were it was drug crazy. I mean, it was a crazy time to be living in Manhattan. John would come in, he'd say, "Why don't you do a story about this? This is something important happening in my neighborhood." And I'd say, "Okay, great." And that was where a lot of the dark stories came from. They were really based in fact.
I would assume so, just the way that they were running.
Later on, when John Bogdanov was drawing, I must have I can't believe I didn't tell you this story. Later on, when John Bogdanov was drawing the Garbage Man story, he actually went and climbed up a fire escape and peered into a crack house because he needed to see what a crack house looked like.
I'm writing those scripts for those stories now, and yeah, that's exactly what the kids do. They basically are peering into a crack house to look and see what it's like inside there, and he just did that from his own personal experience. That's great.
John, yes, John, the I guess the impetus was John Figueroa, but the guy who climbed in to look at the crack house was John Bogdanov, the artist.
He's like, "I really need to see what this looks like." And Figueroa's like,
yeah,
"Oh, there's a crack house over there."
Yeah.
John is on our list of people that we are going to interview, and we're kind of waiting until we get into his writing of the stories, and then we're going to pull him in and talk to him about a lot of stuff. But I'm kind of pushing that down the line a little bit until we get up to those areas.
Sure, that's understandable. But just remember to ask him about climbing into look about the fire escape to look in the window of the crack house.
That will be on my notes. Tim asks, do you want to see Jack and Katie used by other creators like has happened with Alex and Julie?
If they do a good job, see your characters go on to other, they grow up beyond you like children do. But you don't want them to be badly used. So, I'm cool with it. If they don't, then I'm mad at them.
Yeah, June, what's your opinion on that?
No, I agree. If they're used well and, with love and care, yeah, sure.
So as long as they do a good job, you're great with people using your product. It's like, these are our progeny. Take them out into the world. Show them the sights. Treat them well. Hey, wait, why'd my kid come back with a scuffed knee and a broken nose? No, bad other creator. Bad.
Exactly.
Do not make Alex the Dark Phoenix. That's all we're saying. The final question that he has is, kids of all ages like me enjoy macaroni and cheese. My favorite is a homemade recipe. I do with sharp cheddar and wagon wheel pasta. What is your favorite pasta and cheese casserole? And what are the Power Kids?
Oh, goodness. They like straight mac and cheese. I'm sure they would love his. In fact, I think that if he could go over to their house and cook it for them right now, they would be thrilled. Get the pasta, get the cheese, and get to the stove.
They're growing kids.
They are. It sounds good. I wouldn't mind some myself.
Do you each have your own favorite pasta and cheese casserole recipes?
Sure.
I don't. Do you? I don't. You go ahead, June.
I have my mother. It's my mother's, and it's a church lady recipe. It's one of those recipes that makes mass quantities easily. Secret ingredient is mayonnaise. Yes, mayonnaise. It's a Southern thing, but trust me,
So I'm looking at what we had for our wrap-up questions, and besides the next Captain Ginger project that's coming out for June, and besides the young adults DC books that Weezie is working on, are there any other new projects that we can expect besides this 5-issue Power Pack thing that's coming out in X amount of time? I'm actually almost finished with a mini series for Storm King Kids, which is Sandy Carpenter's comic book company. It's animal hybrids, because I've always loved the idea of crossbreeding humans and animals. Bad grown critters that are more or less considered essentially their assets that are owned by a corporation, and the trouble they get into and how they finally break free and become their own creatures. It's a science fiction thing. Nice. I like it.
Maybe doing something else that I can't think of. I was like, I keep doing these different things that I keep, people say, what did you do? Or what are you doing? Know that there's something that I've forgotten. There is something I've forgotten. I can't remember what it is now.
And June?
I'm doing well. I mean, Captain Ginger is going to keep me pretty busy. And then I do a newspaper comic strip called Mary Worth. God willing, I'll still be doing that. And that's probably the only other thing I'm doing is I have to finish thesis for my MFA in illustration. And that's going to be a children's book called The True Story of Cowboy Keith. And I somehow need to get that done by the end of October, so that's going to be interesting. But that's basically it.
Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I remembered what it was. It's a Shazam story that I'm doing for DC. It's an 8-pager that Brett Blevins is drawing. That's particularly fun for me because I haven't really worked with Brett since we did New Mutants a million years ago. So it's like, yay. Old home again.
You're just having the hits with all of your old favorites, aren't you?
I'm loving it.
Just on another podcast last night, was talking to Brett, and he said that he was doing that story. I'm really looking forward to seeing it.
What other podcast were you on?
Name of it. It's hosted by Mike Manley, Brett Blevins, and Jamar Nicholson.
Okay. Editing, Rick here. The podcast that June Brigman was talking about was called Pencil to Pencil, and the episode she was on was released on August the 15th, 2019.
Thank you so much for joining us. We really have enjoyed this chance to get to talk to you and the chances that we had to talk to you in the past. We really, 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 really love it and have really enjoyed it. So, again, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
This is we are two fanboys who, once again, never thought that we'd have this kind of an opportunity to be talking to our heroes, the people that we loved reading, the people that inspired us as kids. So just the fact that you guys have not only agreed to talk to us once, but agreed to talk to us twice, and we can help you promote your books and the things that you do. This really does mean a lot to us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for having us, and I really appreciate the support. I mean, it's because of guys like you that Power Pack's still out there. It's a small but loyal fan following, and it's really great that you do this.
Thank you.
Thank you a lot. It's been great.
Yeah, just the fan base. What's funny is it is worldwide, the people that are fans of what you two created. It's really, really interesting just to see the kind of the dynamics where it's like, wow, this is all across the world of people that like what you had created, and I'm sure are excited to see more.
Hope so.
Thank you. It's you probably know more about that than we do.
Yeah, it's just the fact that we're kind of deep diving into it every 2 weeks that we are being more familiar with it than you right now.
And also just we're doing the show, we get a lot of responses back, and we get people that are just like, we are big fans and we love listening to this and we love hearing the stories again and we love remembering reading the story when we were younger and just the nostalgia factor coming back for them.
And then seeing how they're passing it on to the next generation, where they're like, I read this when I was 14, and now I'm introducing my children to it. And I never thought that I would introduce my two girls to this, and they love it. And so, yeah, it's neat to see how this is kind of sparked a little generational kind of transference from people just kind of passing part of their childhood on to their own children.
I mean, I was down here today, and I'm setting things up, and I've got Carrie reading the Power Pack story, and we're talking about it as she's reading it, and she really is enjoying it and getting excited about it. So
I always love hearing that.
The people that listen to us always get excited when we're interviewing a creator, and especially you two. We've gotten very big responses on that, where people are very excited to hear you talk about your babies. So I think that people will really like this one too.
Thanks. I appreciate your asking us.
I appreciate you saying yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys very much, and enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy the rest of your summer.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Weezie. Thank you so much, June. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
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 June.
Hi, Weezie.
Shout out time! We would like to recognize those listeners that take the time to write in or leave us a review. This is for episode 35, our interview with Jeremy Whitley,
The Art Classroom,
Chris at BTO Batbooks,
Cullen Stapleton and John Holloway and the Worst Comic Podcast Ever,
Dr. Rorschach Hound,
Drew Dillon,
Gal Walks Into a Comic Shop,
Gary Key,
Gene Hendricks,
Gibson, who got so interested in hearing us talk about the Unstoppable Wasp that he wants to go check it out,
Green Lantern HG,
Hoover Jeremiah,
Jeff Polier.
Our guest for the episode, Jeremy Whitley. Thank you again, Jeremy.
Keith Baker.
Let's talk New Warriors.
Limax 7. Holy Carp. Jeremy just name-dropped my hometown. The comic shop is still there and owned by the same person as when I was going there in the 80s.
Max Traver.
Nicholas Prom in the Comic Reflections podcast.
NZ Waffles.
Pat Christatos Samson and the Long Box Crusade.
Paul Young.
Reggie.
Ryan Summers.
Sailor Bear Zodar.
Spider Ed, Far From Home.
Stephen Platts.
Taunf, Agent of Girl.
Tim Price.
Trekker Talk.
Warlord Worlds.
And we have a new Patreon supporter, Doug Jones. Thank you, Doug.
Doug displays discerning and deep dexterity doing digital discovery.
Huh?
He's a geocacher.
Ah.
And a quick reminder that on September 13th, 14th, and 15th, Portland Rose City Comic Con will be going on. I will be there helping out at the Heroes Initiative table most of those days, so stop on by, see me there, or see me walking around Rose City Comic Con, and I'll give you a sticker. That's a deal. And we want to do one final thank you to June and Weezie for taking their time on a sunny summer afternoon to talk with us online. It was amazingly wonderful.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to get the chance to talk to them and to hear about just kind of their creative process and the issue that's coming out at hand. And also, very, very specially, to find out there's going to be some more Power Pack coming up, guys. There's going to be some more Power Pack.
We get to break that. Yay!
Yeah. Vaguely breaking news that might come out before this issue is dropped. But yeah, five more.
Yeah, a new miniseries.
I know. That's
sometime in the future.
Sometime in the future about some subject. I bet Power Kids will be in it.
We are going to enjoy it, and it's going to be awesome, and it's really cool that they get to do this.
Yeah, it really is.
And that they were asked by Marvel.
The fact they were asked is fantastic, and the fact that they're like, yeah, we could do some more of that. I love the fact that they still love this property, and that they're not like, you know what, that was 30 years ago. I'm done. I've moved on. I'm not that person anymore. It's like, yeah, really getting back into that headspace. It makes me so happy.
Very happy. We are Jeff and Rick Present, and we record and self-produce our podcast in a Getting Warm basement in Portland, Oregon. If you would like to talk with us, you can do so through Twitter at Jeff and Rick Present, our Facebook page, Jeff and Rick Present, our email address, Jeff and Rick Present, all one word, at gmail.com, or at our website, jeffandrickpresent.wordpress.com.
Please rate and review us on iTunes or Stitcher or whatever media sites allow you to do that anymore if they still exist. This will help other people find us.
And as always, we want to thank the powerful people in our pack. My wife, Cindy, and our daughter, Carrie.
My fiancée, Hillary, and our daughter, Aurora. We love you. Until next time.
Costumes off.
Our theme music is 80s Action by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com and is licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license.
If you want to do Jack and Alex's voice, you're going to have to raise your pitch a little bit. Your voices are a little deep for those guys.
You haven't listened to our show, have you yet? I do pitch up my own voice for Alex, and I think
show us Alex. Come on, give us Alex.
Okay. Hey Jack, why are you reading those old comic books?
I don't call them old comics. I call them classic comics. And I'm reading them because classic comic books are good, and the modern comics just aren't the same.
Because, as we've discussed before, Jack has a very old soul and is curmudgeonly.
Okay.
Pepper, yes, exactly.
Fantastic idea, Jeff. That's why I got you around.
Yeah, I'm not just a pretty face.
You are a pretty face.
And there they start falling off the old Discord. There they go. Aw. Well, that was nice.
That worked very well.
That was very nice.